One of these days, pow, right in the kiss. Bang, soon. You're going to the moon.
Baby, you're the greatest.
We have been lied to about the moon. We have been told that it is something physical, something that we can land on, where the Bible says that it is a light. Now you know, it seems a little crazy. What, we've been to the moon, have we? Look into the footage. Why is it that none of the astronauts would swear in the Bible that they had landed on the moon?
Well, why don't you just put the end to the record in the argument and put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Cybro, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
Of course, I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
and get the hell out of my house.
Well,
Take your stuff and get the fuck out.
Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
And the shadows in her uncle. I don't give a damn about all that shit.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
You want me to knock you in the head?
Well, I want you to swear to God on the Bible that you walked on the moon.
Okay.
If you walked on the moon, we're given the opportunity to swear to God that you walked on the moon.
I'm going to give you the opportunity to get the hell knocked out of you if you don't leave me alone.
Watching them lie through their teeth, carrying on a hoax that is so outrageous that they're beyond human. They couldn't cover it up. They were just too human.
Exactly. You can see on Neil Armstrong particularly, he doesn't want to lie. This guy just doesn't want to lie.
No.
He's looking down. He just doesn't want to say anything. This is why he didn't give any interviews for the rest of his life.
Look at that. Please do look at that, folks. The YouTube video of the first Apollo crew to come back at press conference. It's really embarrassing. I mean, it's just embarrassing. The lie was so big that they really couldn't fake it that well. It was too much for them. I can't blame them. Then you know what else? So many of the Apollo astronauts who allegedly went to the moon and all that kept really, when you think about it, low profiles. They just didn't talk much. And to this day, they don't talk much.
You want the world of tomorrow? Want the world of tomorrow? I'll give you the world of tomorrow. You're going to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
So which one of you is ready to go to Mars? Are you ready? And I think you're ready. I know you're ready, right? We just discussed that. She'd like to go to Mars very quickly. Who's ready to go to Mars up there?
We are absolutely ready to go to Mars.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to.
Who's ready to go to Mars up there?
We are absolutely ready to go to Mars.
Well, we want to try and do it during my first term, or at worst during my second term, so we'll have to speed that up a little bit, okay?
But we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
One of these days, Alice. One of these days.
Yeah, I know, Ralph. Right to the moon.
We'd like to offer the upholders of this status quo viewpoint yet another major challenge. In Western Australia, during the live telecast of Apollo 11 in 1969, many viewers in that region of Australia, including Una Ronald, were to have an extraordinary experience.
When this moon landing was in the offing, I for one decided to stay up to watch the live telecast, and I did, and we saw a lot of activity on the television screen from the control centre, a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement.
But before we get to what happens next, we need to know how the TV coverage of Apollo 11 was supposed to have reached our screens.
Just shortly before Armstrong stepped on the moon, you can actually see the switch take place where it goes from this stark black and white to a little better, and they stayed with the television signal from Honeysuckle Creek. So when Armstrong stepped on the surface of the moon, it actually came through Australia, but at the time it was reported as being through Goldstone. The voice came through Goldstone, but the TV pictures came from Australia.
It appears that correct information was apparently withheld at the time as to what was supposed to be happening with Apollo 11's reception.
As I watched this person walking, a Coke bottle in the lower right quadrant of the screen, it seemed to be kicked over and rolled across. And for me that was just astounding, and I exclaimed aloud at the time, "It's a fake, it's a setup, they're not on the moon at all, look at this, it's a Coke bottle." And they were going to broadcast the same film again in the morning, and I phoned several of my friends, "Did you watch?" And they hadn't, but they were going to watch in the morning. And I waited, of course, to say, "Well, did you see it?" But it didn't happen. I watched the second telecast. There was no Coke bottle, which led me to believe at the time that it must have been edited out. I was convinced it was fake, but why? Why it should be faked? Why such a setup? 2 or 3 others of my acquaintance did see it. Furthermore, there were letters written to the West Australian newspaper. They mentioned the Coke bottle. And I waited for it to brew up. I thought, my goodness, there's going to be a glorious ding-dong here going on about this Coke bottle. But suddenly there was nothing at all. And I presume that those who saw it denied their own senses, as people will do. Began to think, well, they couldn't have seen it, or perhaps it was there and that was okay. They'd thrown some rubbish out of the spacecraft or something like that. It could have been. People will invent all kinds of solutions to what is not explained.
What Una Ronald and her friends did not know was that Western Australia was a special case concerning the reception of the initial Apollo images. Contrary to the procedure for that continent set up by Honeysuckle Creek and Parkes, together with NASA and Australian TV, the Apollo 11 images were neither sent directly to Western Australia via satellite, nor was there a broadband link from Sydney in 1969. These images had to be sent over to Perth from Sydney by other means and then retransmitted locally. So for an engineer in the loop, aware of the hoaxed live TV coverage, there was motive for adding further additions to the scene. Moreover, here was an opportunity for someone in the know to manipulate the material before transmission across Western Australia. What does Una Ronald, who was in Western Australia at the time, think about these attempts at fakery?
When I saw the Coke bottle, for me, the whole moon landing from that point was a fake. It was a setup. And if it was a setup, it must have been filmed somewhere on Earth. and it would have been filmed, to my way of thinking, in America at some lonely site, or alternatively in a huge indoor set, somewhere where they could be private, be secluded, be able to produce this quite passable picture of someone walking on the moon.
It's so bright and milky white, shining down upon the ground.
In My Room presents Moon in My Room. See the moon come to life in your own room with brilliant moonlight and authentic detail. Activate it with the remote control and see a different lunar phase each time you touch the button. Choose from 12 different phases of the moon: crescent moon, half moon, full moon, you decide. Or choose the automatic function and watch the moon shift through all the lunar phases on its own. Look outside each night to see what type of moon it is. Then match your moon to the one out in the night sky. It's also an amazing nightlight with auto shut-off for bedtime.
What if there was a circular light on the inside of the moon, and the moon is hollow, and the moon has somewhat of a semi-transparent, opaque but semi-transparent exterior? The light from the sun is very different than the light from the moon.
The moon gives off her own light. Yes, you heard me correctly. The moon gives off her own light and does not reflect the light of the sun, as science falsely so-called claims, as NASA claims, and as most people claim.